Luna, over here for a sec. As I was walking down the apartment hallway, yawning after a long day at work, I suddenly felt a hand reaching out from the neighboring apartment's entrance, grabbing my arm. What? In a split second of confusion, I screamed, having been unexpectedly dragged into my neighbor's place. What on earth are you doing? I'm gonna call the cops. As I shouted, my neighbor, Mr. Johnson, blurted out, "Sorry." But I had no other choice. Growing increasingly suspicious, I shook off the grip from my arm and glared at Mr. Johnson. You're up to something with me, aren't you? Seeing me in a panic, Johnson said, "Please, calm down." I thought, how can I stay calm in this situation? But the words that came out of his mouth next sent a chill down my spine. Actually, my name is Luna. I'm currently 24 years old and work at a well-known trading company that any American would recognize. My job is incredibly demanding, but every day, I relish the joy of earning my own money. Living alone in a city apartment, I've always yearned for the freedom to make decisions on my own terms. This is because, ever since I can remember, I never received an allowance. Raised by a single mother, she struggled to provide for me, so it seemed understandable that there wasn't extra money for an allowance. However, my mom worked nights and was quite popular at her job, so she must have had a reasonable income. Yet, she never gave me a cent for an allowance because, as society would label, she was a toxic parent. I started living alone to escape her control. I'm going to share the story of what happened between my mom and me in the order it occurred. The town where I was born and raised is located outside the boroughs of New York City, so remote that it feels presumptuous to claim I'm from New York. Although it's now a popular community near the station, my childhood home was far from the nearest station, to the extent that life would be difficult without a car or bus. I lived under the constant watch of my mother in this town, neither urban nor rural. My mom had me at 18 and was abandoned by my dad, so she raised me single-handedly. I should be grateful for her raising me alone, but my resentment towards the numerous restrictions she imposed on me far outweighed any desire to thank her. As a kid, I never questioned it, but by elementary school, I started to feel something was off. Mom, Mindy gets an allowance of $20 every month. I want an allowance too. There's a comic book I want to buy. That was the first time I ever asked my mom for something. My mom visibly frowned at my words, then quickly furrowed her brows in a show of sympathy the next moment. Having money might get you into trouble with bad people. Besides, I'll buy you anything you want. No need for an allowance. She patted my head as if to say, I'm doing this for your own good. I wasn't convinced, but hearing her say, I'll buy you anything you want, made me think, well, if that's the case, I guess it's okay, and I resigned myself to it. But her words were empty promises. No matter how much I pleaded for the latest games everyone was playing or the trendy comics, she never bought me a single thing I wanted. Birthdays and Christmases were filled with educational books, leaving me disappointed. Yet, I couldn't dare to ask her repeatedly due to her intense pressure. She never hit me but controlled me mentally with "I'm worried about you." Even in elementary school, I realized my mom was different from my friends' parents. I spent every day desperately thinking of ways to somehow escape from my parents' control. Her control didn't lessen as I moved through middle and high school. It got even worse. Not only did she not give me an allowance, but I also had to report and get permission to hang out with friends or go on dates. Not only did she not give me an allowance, but I also had to report and get permission from her for everything, whether it was hanging out with friends or going on dates with a boy I liked. Once, after sneaking out at night to meet my boyfriend, I was met the next morning by my mother's furious face, declaring, "You're going without meals for the next 3 days." Without an allowance, I couldn't even buy food outside. I was too embarrassed to let my friends or boyfriend know that I had a toxic mom, so I couldn't bring myself to ask them to treat me to something as simple as a snack from the gas station. After 3 days of hunger, boyfriend, understandably worried, came to me and asked, "Are you okay?" I couldn't hold back my tears at his kind words and finally opened up to him about my mother. I still can't forget the look of shock on his face when he heard about her. At the time, my boyfriend sympathized with me, saying, "That's tough, but then he started obviously avoiding me afterward. No matter how much I tried to reach out, without even a smartphone, I couldn't contact boyfriend. 2 weeks after we stopped seeing each other, I overheard him talking to his friends in the school hallway, saying, "Her mom seems like a real piece of work. I don't want to deal with that. She's not bad, but she's just too desperate, it's kinda scary." Hearing him talk about me, I realized he felt bothered by the fact that my mom was toxic, not wanting to protect me but instead feeling alienated. I was overwhelmed with frustration and tears right there. I quietly slipped away to a corner of the hallway, unnoticed by him. It was over with him. Still having feelings for him, I was forced to abruptly end my love for him in such a manner. Filled with anger towards my mom, I lashed out at her when I got home. "Why do you have to control me like this? Because of you, boyfriend left me." It wasn't just boyfriend. My friends, too, realized how abnormal my mom was and wanted to keep their distance from me. I felt I had to vent this frustration at my mom, or I couldn't keep myself together. But, to my dismay, my mom looked pleased when she learned that my relationship with boyfriend had ended. "Well, that's good. It's actually lucky that Luna's boyfriend left her. It's a waste of time to spend it on some unknown guy. You have infinite possibilities ahead of you." Hearing her response in such a self-indulgent tone, I felt a deep despair. This parent could never understand my feelings. Not just my feelings, but even common sense didn't apply to her. She had her own unshakable sense of righteousness and despised anything that threatened it. And controlling my life according to her wishes was my mother's reason for living. Unable to contain myself and feeling dizzy, I rushed up to my room on the second floor. Once I closed the door, I lay on my bed and cried. "Luna, what's wrong? Aren't you eating dinner?" My mother's seemingly concerned voice weighed heavier on my chest than any punishment. "I don't need it. If only this room had a lock, I would close it right now." But my mother, who finds joy in controlling me, would never allow me a room with a lock, leaving me feeling utterly dejected as I cried, stifling my sobs. After graduating high school, I vowed to live alone once I became a college student. I channeled my frustration into determination, studying for exams as if it was my revenge. Since then, I studied desperately and secretly started a part-time job behind my mother's back. I realized I needed to earn money to live alone when I became a college student. I needed my guardian's consent for the job, but I managed to fake the signature and got away with it. I worked diligently in my studies to obtain scholarships. I focused solely on part-time work and studying, and somehow managed to slip into the acceptance range of a public university in New York, which was my goal. When I finally decided to inform my mother about my mock exam results and university choice, she smiled sweetly and said, "You've worked hard on your studies. That's great. With these grades, you can easily get into M University." M University she referred to was a public university in the neighboring town. If I ended up attending that university, there was no chance I'd be allowed to live on my own. M University was just a 20-minute commute from home. Despite my choice of a university within New York, my mother had been recommending a completely different university in a neighboring town. This left me feeling a bit dizzy. She was still trying to control me even as I was about to become a college student. I hated that idea. "No, I'm not going to M University. I want to go to our university." When I told her that, my mother distorted her face and said in a stern tone, "What are you talking about? Our university isn't right for you. Besides, what if you don't get in? I won't allow anything but M University," she answered, seemingly trying to suppress me with her firm words. Frustrated and unable to hold back my tears. Enough. Turning my back on my mother, I ran up to my room on the second floor. In the end, even as a college student, I couldn't escape my mother's control. All my efforts felt in vain. Balancing study for exams and part-time work was incredibly tough. Despite sacrificing sleep and working tirelessly to achieve good grades, it all seemed unnecessary now. I could probably get into M University without any further study. I was so frustrated that I couldn't sleep well that night. I ended up taking the entrance exam for M University and, as expected, got in. I spent the rest of my high school days like a zombie, and before I knew it, I was a college student. Congratulations on your admission. Here, this is your celebration gift. As I prepared to go to college with a vacant look, my mother handed me a smartphone. Really? Is this for me? Of course. I've been saving money for this day. Now you can use it to your heart's content. I couldn't believe my mother, who had never given me freedom before, was now presenting me with a smartphone. My mother had never tried to give me freedom before, but maybe she had finally decided to stop controlling me. Either way, the smartphone in my hand felt like wings of freedom, taking me far away. With the smartphone, I was like a fish in water, thoroughly enjoying my college life. I made new friends and was delighted to be able to communicate normally with them. While enjoying college life, I also seriously thought about my future. Instead of joining clubs or sports teams, I engaged in student organizations and volunteer activities. As a result of applying what I learned in my job hunting, I secured a position at the most famous trading company in the States. This company, of course, is located in New York, so I finally got to live on my own as a working adult. My mother smiled again and congratulated me on my job, presenting me with a wallet worth $2,000 as a gift. Over the past few years, her control over me had loosened considerably. I genuinely thanked her, saying, "Thank you for everything." Truthfully, there had been many times she made me feel resentful and I couldn't feel grateful. But I thought, since I'd be living apart from her, I might as well express my gratitude in the end. It's nothing. Just take care and do your best. I didn't question why she was so willing to let me go, considering her recent change in attitude. But I should have been more suspicious at that time. It should have been clear that my mother wouldn't let me go so easily. I ended up living alone in a town near the center of New York City. The rent was quite high, but thanks to my company's housing allowance, my personal expense was only about $600 a month. It wasn't a large apartment building, and I would remember the faces of the residents as we passed by each other. I lived in a corner room on the 3rd floor, and next door lived a man named Johnson. We only exchanged greetings when we happened to pass by each other. He looked to be about 5 years older than me, with a slender build and a kind appearance. In New York, neighborly interactions are usually indifferent, so beyond a simple hello, I never really talked with Johnson, but I was relieved because he didn't seem like a strange person. I didn't tell my mother about my apartment. If I did, I wouldn't know when she might show up unannounced. So, I just told her, "I'll be back soon," and kept my address a secret. She seemed a bit down but quickly accepted it, saying, "Well, that's fine." My mother frequently called or texted me. Often, while I was focused on my computer at work, I would receive calls from my mother. "I'm working right now. Please don't call." "Oh, really? A short call should be fine, right?" "No, it's not okay." I couldn't hide my irritation with her laid-back tone. The job at the trading company was demanding, and my seniors were always bustling around the office. In such an environment, being seen making personal calls on my smartphone would draw disapproving looks from colleagues. "Oh, that's too bad. I'll call again later." "Just don't call during the day." I was exasperated by my mother's nonchalant response, which felt like pushing against a bead curtain. The job was exhausting, but honestly, her constant calls were even more draining. And it wasn't just calls. She kept sending messages, and once I realized I had 100 unread notifications, I felt a chill down my spine. "What's wrong?" Seeing my strained expression, a colleague looked concerned. "It's nothing." I managed to maintain my composure and continued working. 2 years passed like this, and I turned 24. Even though it was only my 2nd year, my salary was unbelievably high, and I felt a deep joy in being able to earn so much money on my own. Gradually, I became more focused on work, increasingly ignoring calls from my mother. But since I hadn't told her where I lived, there was no chance of running into her unless I went home. The image of my mother slowly faded from my life. I finally felt like I was living my own life. One day, after having drinks with my colleagues, I was more tipsy than usual on my way home. It was 10 p.m. when I reached the third floor of my apartment building, staggering slightly towards my corner room. Another long day at work, I mumbled to myself while yawning, when suddenly I felt someone's presence.
Luna, over here for a sec.
Just as I heard a man's voice, I was grabbed by the arm from the entrance of the next-door apartment.
What?
In a moment of confusion, I screamed and was dragged into my neighbor's place.
What on earth are you doing? I'm gonna call the cops.
As I shouted, my neighbor, Mr. Johnson, said, "Sorry." But I had no other choice. Growing increasingly suspicious, I shook off the grip from my arm and glared at Johnson.
You're planning to do something to me, aren't you?
Seeing me panic, Mr. Johnson said, "Please, calm down." I thought, how can I stay calm in this situation? But the next words out of his mouth made me shudder.
Actually, I saw someone break into your apartment. What?
Johnson looked serious as he mentioned break-in, making my spine tingle. However, I immediately thought it might be a trap to lure me out, and I became alert.
What a horrible joke! You're just trying to keep me here, right? Let me go now.
Being not used to men, I was more afraid of Johnson than anything and tried to escape his apartment.
Wait! It's dangerous to go outside.
Startled by his intense tone, I flinched and stopped in my tracks. Turning around, I saw Mr. Johnson looking desperate, gazing at me. I was at a crossroads, whether to believe this man, whom I barely spoke to, or not. But Johnson's eyes were so direct and clear, they didn't seem like those of someone who was lying. It was just a hunch, but I felt inclined to listen to him a bit more.
Break in? What kind of person? And when did it happen?
As I asked with a trembling voice, Johnson seemed to sense my guard dropping a bit and started to answer, "Well, it's like this."
I couldn't see very well, but the person was wearing all black clothes, long sleeves, and pants, looking somewhat suspicious. Actually, I've seen someone similar around this apartment complex a few times before. At first, I thought they were just another resident and didn't pay much attention. But about 3 hours ago, when I came home, I saw that person entering your apartment, and that's when I thought something was off.
3 hours ago. It's 10 p.m. now, so that means around 7 p.m. Even so, wearing all black clothes in July, isn't that hot? No, that's not what's important. How could someone enter my house without having a key?
At first, I thought the person might be a friend or boyfriend of yours, Luna, so I didn't pay much attention. But then, just a while ago, I heard you coming home and got a bit shocked. Even if they were a friend or boyfriend, staying alone in someone else's home for 3 hours seems a bit strange, don't you think? That's when it hit me that this person could be dangerous, so I decided to stop you.
Hearing Mr. Johnson's words, I started to tremble violently. If what he was saying was true, then the intruder might still be hiding in my apartment right now.
I haven't given my keys to anyone. I don't have a boyfriend, and I haven't made plans with any friends.
That's right. Ever since a harsh experience with a boyfriend in high school, I had avoided dating men. So, I currently don't have a romantic partner. Even friends, I don't have any close enough nearby to invite to my house. Then who could be breaking into my home?
Luna, please calm down and listen. Have you been stalked by anyone recently?
Johnson asked in a calm voice, trying to soothe my agitation.
Stalked? No, nothing like that.
I had no recollection of such a thing. But it was entirely possible that someone was stalking me without my knowledge.
I see. Maybe you just haven't noticed, but the perpetrator could have been acting this way for a while. Is there anyone, perhaps a romantic partner with whom you had a falling out or argument, that comes to mind?
When Mr. Johnson asked me that, I thought about the men around me, but I haven't had any such relationships with my work colleagues. As I said earlier, since a high school incident, I've been afraid to get involved with men.
No, there's no one. I've been avoiding such things all this time.
I couldn't think of anyone who might be the intruder. It seemed the only option left was to contact the police. But having never called 911 in my life, I hesitated to make the report. After all, the claim of an intruder in my house was just Johnson's word. Should I really trust what this man is saying? I stared at my phone's call button, unable to press it. Impatient, Johnson said, "I'll call the police." Just then, the doorbell rang. Startled, I accidentally dropped my phone. Who could it be at this time? Trying to steady my shaking body, I peeked through the peephole of Johnson's apartment door.
What?
Seeing the person in black clothes outside, I was speechless.
What's wrong?
Mr. Johnson's voice was trembling too. He must be scared as well. Swallowing hard, I answered, "It's my mother."
Your mother?
To Mr. Johnson, my answer might have seemed anticlimactic. But for me, the fact that my mother was standing in front of Johnson's door, next to my apartment, brought an unbelievable amount of fear.
What's going on? Oh, could it be that the person I mistook for a stalker was your mother? If so, I'm really sorry. That's a huge misunderstanding. I apologize.
Mr. Johnson apologized to me. However, I shook my head. No, it's not that. It's just that, I hesitated whether to tell Johnson that my mother was toxic and that I hadn't even given her the address of this apartment. But before I could, my mother banged on the door.
Hello, excuse me. I think my daughter is in there. Could she come out, please?
My mother's loud voice echoed in the hallway, making me jump. What did she just say? My daughter is in there? How could she know that? Mr. Johnson looked just as shocked as I felt. I couldn't just do nothing, so I flung open the door.
Oh, Luna? Finally found you. I've been trying to contact you, but you've been ignoring me. I just wanted to see you so badly, I came here. Aren't you coming home yet?
Seeing my mother standing there as if it were the most natural thing, I felt nauseous.
Mom, how did you know where I live? And how did you know I was here?
I had so many questions. Dressed all in black, just like Johnson described, like a stalker. And how did she know where my house and whereabouts were? Why was she sneaking around behind my back? Well, that's easy.
I put GPS trackers in that smartphone and wallet. What?
I was shocked by my mother's revelation. GPS? The smartphone and wallet were gifts from my mother for special occasions. I received the smartphone when I became a college student and have been using the same one for about 6 years, which means I've been monitored by my mother all this time. A chill ran down my spine. I swallowed hard.
At first, it was just the smartphone, but you sometimes leave it at home, right? So I thought, if I put GPS trackers in both the phone and the wallet, you'd always have one with you.
You're my precious daughter, Luna.
I've always been worried about you, thinking what if something dangerous happened.
Watching my mother speak so nonchalantly, I completely lost my composure. I thought that becoming a working adult meant I had finally gained true freedom. Finally earning my own money, doing what I wanted when I wanted, I thought I could enjoy such basic freedoms. I thought I could enjoy such basic freedoms that everyone else takes for granted. But it turned out I was just dancing in the palm of my mother's hand all along. If this continues, my life will forever be controlled by my mother. I can't stand that. I was done having my life thrown into disarray by my mother.
Mom!
I called out to her in a very calm voice. My mother responded in her usual clueless tone, "Yes, what is it?"
I'm never going back home again, Mom. Whenever I'm with you, I feel like I'm always being restrained. It's always been like that, hasn't it? You call me your precious daughter, your beloved daughter, but you've stifled everything I wanted to do. You neatly clipped my wings every time I tried to spread them, using worry as a plausible excuse. Each time, it hurt me deeply and caused me great pain. I am not your thing, Mom. I have my own will as a person, and I don't want it to be tainted by anyone else. So, Mom, let's cut ties. Please don't ever contact me again or come to see me.
In a final outburst, I shouted all my feelings at her. My mother, hearing my declaration of cutting ties for the first time, visibly paled. She must have been shocked to be defied like this, always assuming I would comply with her.
Cutting ties, what? Why? I'm your mother, Luna. Look, I didn't come today to restrain you. That's right. I just thought of borrowing some money from you. That's all I came for.
My mother, now in disarray, suddenly claimed she wanted to borrow money, which made no sense.
Money? What are you talking about? Mom, are you in debt? Were you planning to steal money from your daughter, who earns a lot? You never intended to borrow, did you? You sneaked into my apartment to steal money, right?
Everything clicked about why she had been in my apartment for 3 hours. If she really wanted to see me, she would have called or texted. But there was no contact from her today. She must have planned to steal from me and then see me afterward. But I don't keep cash at home. My bank books are hidden where they can't be easily found. Frustrated that she couldn't fulfill her intention to steal, she just wanted to satisfy her desire to see me and came next door. Thinking this, I felt disgusted even considering her as my mother.
Steal? No, I just wanted to borrow a little.
My mother, unused to such confrontations, began to panic. I couldn't trust a single word she said anymore. Gathering all my strength, I yelled at her again.
Enough! A person who tries to steal from her own daughter is not a mother. Never show your face to me again. I'm canceling my phone. Goodbye.
Ignoring my mother's wide-eyed expression, I forcefully shut Johnson's door. For a while, she kept shouting, "Luna, I'm sorry. Please open the door." It seemed the neighbors found the commotion suspicious and called the police. I heard the sirens of a patrol car and my mother arguing with the police in the hallway. The police managed to take her out of the building. Exhausted, I slumped to the ground.
Are you okay?
Mr. Johnson asked, looking at me with concern.
I'm sorry for involving you in a family fight because of my mother.
No, it's okay.
Just rest for today.
Thank you. Grateful for Mr. Johnson's kindness, I returned to my room and crawled into bed. I decided to sleep without thinking about anything. My consciousness slowly faded into darkness. As for what happened afterward, I separated my family register from my mother's to create some distance. Though legally I couldn't cut ties completely with my biological parent, having my name removed from her family register made me feel like I had escaped her control, and I felt a sense of relief. Furthermore, I threw away the smartphone and wallet my mother gave me, replaced them with new ones, and moved to a different apartment. Of course, I haven't shared my new phone number with my mother. Now, she won't be able to pinpoint my whereabouts. After that incident at my apartment, my mother, who had received a stern warning from the police for causing a disturbance, apparently became reclusive. As she confessed, after I left home and started working, she indulged in high-end brands of clothes and bags to distract herself from loneliness, accumulating considerable debt. Eventually, she ran out of living expenses and resorted to borrowing from high-interest lenders. She is now troubled daily by debt collectors. However, I couldn't bring myself to help her. The fact that she had controlled and monitored me, even using GPS, is a shocking event that I can never forgive and is etched in my heart. If cutting ties with her serves as a punishment for her, so be it. I plan to live in a world without my mother. Even after moving to my new apartment, I kept in touch with Johnson, my former neighbor. Initially, I reached out to thank him, but he continued to stay in contact, and now we even go out for meals together. Having refused romantic relationships with men for a long time, escaping from my mother's control has made me more open to love. If things go well with Johnson, it would ironically be thanks to my mother, but I want to build a bright future with Mr. Johnson, away from my mother's knowledge.